I'd like to talk about my skiving knives today. Now, skiving knives, as you may be aware, come in various shapes and sizes and are used for skiving, that is, taking down the edges of leather to thin it out, or taking down leather in general to thin it out. But I'm not going to talk about how to use skiving knives. I'm just going to talk about the two skiving knives that I own. This one here is a cheaper unit. It's made of carbon steel, and this one is a more expensive number that I bought from Wuta off AliExpress, and this is made of high speed steel. Now, the difference, just in case you're not aware of it, is that carbon steel is a softer, well, it's a hardened steel, but it's a softer steel, not as hard as high speed steel. High speed steel is used in things like drill bits for drilling steel and the like. So, and for cutters, for milling cutters and the like, not quite as hard as carbide, but very hard nonetheless. The advantage of high speed steel is that it retains an edge much better than carbon steel. So carbon steel, the edge is quite fragile, and when you use it, it can damage the edge more easily. You have to sharpen it more often. I use a strop here. I've just got a bit of leather on a piece of flat hardwood here that I use to strop the edges between sharpenings. I use a diamond stone to sharpen them, but I use a strop to just buff up the edges like so. Just run it along there several times. I have some cutting compound on there. I rub the cutting compound in, and then I just buff the edge like so, strop the edge as they say, and then it just forms a slight burr on the backside. When you feel the burr forming, you just remove the burr by running it back like that, and you can run it back and forth a couple of times if you wish. And then that gives it a nice sharp edge, and you can then use it for cutting or skiving, and it's beautiful and sharp. The disadvantage with the high-speed steel is that it takes a lot more effort to sharpen it because it's a harder steel. The diamond is fine. You can sharpen it with diamond, but it does take longer. You can sharpen it with aluminium oxide stone. It does take longer to sharpen it, and the burr that it forms on the edge takes a little more effort to. So you can still strop it using a stropping compound, and you should strop it often, just to keep the edge nice and fresh. And when you feel that burr, you can just feel it with the tip of your finger there forming. And then you just draw it back across it there, and that burr is now gone, and you can use it perfectly fine. And it cuts like butter. Both of them cut really well, but this retains an edge much better, but it's harder to sharpen. I made these little holders myself. Just use a bit of leather around the side there, and then stitch it in place with that. And that one's just a slip on, and this one has got a little clip on it. I've just experimented with different types to see how they worked, and they were both perfectly fine. So there are my skiving knives and my strop.